That was a playbook for how to get a baby.
How to get a baby. I mean, it's not so much with how to get a husband. I mean, if you want a baby out there,
the Bible's kind of a playbook for how to get a husband.
What is a promise? If God's promised you something, what does that look like?
I think it is a silly belief system to believe that God has not been interested in a part of your life that matters incredibly to you.
Boom, yes.
He's not going back and being like, oh my gosh, grab the editors of heaven. We've forgotten the husband, you know? Like, I don't think he's like that.
Right. People live like he's like that.
Let me assure you, he is not.
Yeah.
I don't think there is like a formula to getting a breakthrough. I think one thing I would recommend.
Hey everybody, this is Rita Springer. Welcome again to the Rita Springer podcast. And worship is my weapon. I am not doing a repeat show. This is kind of like a refresh. Because the last time I had Mia Fields. Do you still go by Mia Fields?
Yeah, I go by lots of things. But Mia Fields is like one of those things.
People just kind of still call you Mia Fields.
Yeah. I mean, even my husband sometimes calls me Mia Fields. But even in his heart, it's Donovan.
I mean, but you changed your name, Mia, right? When you got married.
In my heart, I did.
Oh, okay, but you didn't legally do it.
It's quite the process.
Yeah.
You know, and all my business stuff is under Mia Fields because it's been under Mia Fields for 23 years.
Right.
So
nowadays it doesn't feel like it kind of matters.
I know. It probably does. There's probably like, you know, I think I'm going to get my next passport under Donovan just, you know.
Yeah, just because.
Just because God's given me this great gift of being able to change my name and be partnered with somebody and come under their authority. So,
right.
You know.
I know I've often wondered, man, if I ever get married, would I just keep a hyphen?
Yeah.
You know, make it a hyphen. I don't know. Because,
I don't know. All my friends call me, like, you know, at our church, everyone calls me Mia Donovan. They roster me as Mia Donovan.
Oh, they do.
But, but everybody else calls me Mia Fields.
Well, you were here when it was audio, not video. And this is before you found out that you were even pregnant. And we talked about faith. And so I was like,
subject.
I know, which is your favorite subject. You're the best at it. And I was like, I need to have Mia back because finding your husband was an incredible, miraculous story.
Yeah.
And then actually getting pregnant and now Booth is a year old. That is a miraculous story. And there were so many people in the audio that connected with me saying that audio podcast was life-giving to them.
Oh, good.
Because there were so many that were struggling to believe for marriage and struggling to have children and all kind of stuff. And you were speaking right into that. I mean, faith is a hard subject, Mia.
You know, it's a very hard subject because I think people, you know, I always say like the cancer of the church world is disappointment, you know, and like once you've been disappointed, it's quite hard to not have that become your expectation, especially the more you experience it, to like come out of that and believe for something different, even though your experience says it's probably not going to be different.
Right.
Like, I mean, it's near impossible, except that it's not. You know, I always say I wish that, I mean, I would not change our journey. I would not change our journey for having kids. I would not change my journey of meeting my husband. I wouldn't change my journey of even believing God that, you know, when I was a little kid, I really wanted to write songs, but I was terrible. Like I played the euphonium. That's like the baby tuba. It's so unhelpful,
right.
You know, but God is so kind. And I think if people could, you know, maybe the podcast is finished 3 minutes in by me saying this, is that, you know, faith feels like this big mystical thing of like, oh, how do I like, you know, rally myself and like, you know, amp myself up to have more faith, you know, and I don't think it's necessarily that. I think every person's been given a measure of faith, and I think the more that you use it, it's like a muscle and it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. But even that, like people still say, yeah, but what is faith? People like, is it, it's like faith is being sure of things hoped for. It's like the evidence of things unseen. Yes, that's all true and like absolutely biblical. I like to put it in these terms for people. Faith is being unbelievably convinced that God is incredibly kind and that he does what he says he will do. You know, when you're convinced that God is as good as he says he is, then you're not looking for like, I'm having faith for this outcome. You're looking to God saying, I'm having faith that you're gonna figure this out and you're gonna be good to me, and that whatever your promise is, you're gonna find a way to keep it. that's one thing, that I've had, especially like women reach out, like, how do you believe God for something that is based on somebody else's free will, and I say, like, to those women, you can't speak your will over somebody else's. So I wasn't praying, God, make Jordan my husband when I met Jordan. I was saying, God, you've made a promise to me that you are custom making something for me. And I believe you can do that no matter what. And, there was a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, is this whole thing going to not work out? I think you always have those moments in walking out a miracle and in walking out, your own breakthrough. You have those moments of, what if this all, you have one of those like Abraham with the son on an altar moment.
Yeah.
And I remember God saying to me, do you trust that I can keep my promise to you, whether it's through this outlet or not? And I had to actually take a step back and say, yeah, I have to trust that you're as good as you say you are, and that you do what you do what you say you will do, regardless of how it looks. And I think that kind of can be the tripping point for people, because we're so good at going, oh, I totally know how God is going to figure this out, especially when we start to see pieces fall into place.
Yeah.
Oh, this has happened, so then therefore this is how it's going to work out. But I think you have to go back, get a promise from God, and just, almost like camp out on that promise and not move from it.
Yeah.
Don't add to it, don't take away from it, just camp out on that promise.
Hi guys, I have found a product called Field of Greens that I just love for myself. I would never sell something on this product that isn't working for me. And so I'm a little picky about that. But I'm also one, as I get older, I just think more in line of health and what's nutritious, and should I be eating that? Should I not be eating that? What should I be doing? How should I be doing it? And so this actually, when it came, it was like, I ask a lot of questions. I've got inflammation in my body. I've got gut problems, and I'm exhausted a lot of times in the afternoon. And because this is all natural and it's basically just pure fruits and vegetables, I have found that it actually really helps in all of those areas for me. I take it in the morning, I take it in the afternoon. And, sometimes when I'm really sluggish in the afternoon, it's just a great little pick-me-up for me. So this product I love. I think you'll benefit from it. If it doesn't work for you, it comes back with a full money-back guarantee. Who doesn't love a money-back guarantee? If you order it today, you'll get a 15% discount and free shipping. So there's a promo code that you use for that, and it's just the word worship in all caps, WORSHIP. So you go to fieldofgreens.com, and then when you're checking out, there's a promo code you enter, worship, and that'll give you your 15% off and free shipping. So remember, it's a money-back guarantee. And if you are one like me that at the end of the day doesn't consume natural fruits and vegetables like we should, this is a great secondary choice. Well, that's the thing with you though too, because I want you to kind of recap a little bit. I know oh man, you've done such a great job in other interviews that you've done, but the way that you told your story last time, I think the thing that to me is like, you didn't have a life that anybody would have said, oh, look, a faith believer has been born. You know what I'm saying? It's
oh my gosh, no.
You didn't have, that wasn't your story.
No.
The fact that you have the faith that you do have with the story that you got is almost a God miraculous miracle in and of itself. Recap that, because I think some people just think, well, you're just born with faith.
Which I do think that like everybody's given a measure of faith.
A measure of it.
I think I used mine a lot, and I think if you use yours a lot, like I have my husband, Joran, people look at him, you can tell he works out.
Yeah.
And people want the results that he has, but they don't want to do what he's doing.
Right.
He's getting up at
4:30
every morning. So I'm like, you want to look like that. You want to have those results. You want to be able to lift what he lifts. You want it to be obvious that you work out.
Yeah.
But you don't want to do what he did. And I have people say like, I want a story like yours about, I'm believing I'm going to meet my husband like with a story like yours. And I think, I hope you know what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Because it's not.
Because there's a cost to it.
I mean, yeah, would I put my hand up and say, yes, God, let's let every major event in my life be something that I have to contend heaven really hard for. Yeah. That's not ideally what I would want. Some things I'm just like, can't I just get pregnant just easily? Can't I just like walk into a Starbucks and meet my husband, I love those stories. I love those stories where it's just this like beautiful, like God orchestrated chance encounter.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't looking for it and it came. Oh no, I was looking for it. I was in my mid-30s. I was looking for it.
Yeah.
But I didn't even grow up in the church necessarily. Like I'm like the third born of triplets. My mum was 22 when she had us, and she was single and struggling with substance abuse. And I grew up in and out of refuges, women's refuges, and in and out of foster care. My mum, I'm one of those miracle stories where, my mum actually fought to get us back, and it was the thing that helped change her life, taking her kids really seriously.
Yeah. Because she went back to get you.
Oh yeah, she went to court and fought to get us back, and she had to like prove that she was clean. She had to get like a house. She got this, in Australia it's called a housing commission house, and it's kind of like the projects, and so she was in one house and it was deemed like unfit for kids. I didn't even have like my own bed until I was like 3 or 4. We slept in my mum's car, and she would take us to like the public pools, and there was like a little outdoor shower at the public pools, and that's how she would shower us. And then we would go back in her car and sleep in her car. And then we lived at a women's refuge. We shared a twin bed. Me and my sister shared a twin bed until I think we were 3. And she had her own story, which was just it would break your heart if you heard her story. But like the person she is today, you're kind of in awe of my mom.
Yeah.
So it's not like I had this like thing where I like had this big legacy of faith, except that I think the gifts of God are irrevocable.
Yeah.
And I think that the same way you have, sometimes you have generational curses that you're born into. I do think everybody's born into generational like blessings, And one thing that my family does have is they actually all have like a pretty big faith gift. It's probably why they all struggle with disappointment a little bit, and have to push past that. But so from a very young age,
would they have called it faith though? Like, what do you call that when you don't like? Christianity isn't in the mix here.
Yeah, I think they would probably just have called it like
positive people.
Yeah, like being optimistic and things working out. So the way I came to know God was actually through the Salvation Army.
Right.
And the Salvation Army would pick us up. My mum would be, she wouldn't mind me saying this. My mum would be passed out drunk.
Yeah.
And we would go and get in the Salvation Army Sunday school bus. Like just this little van would come by like all the project houses, and they would pick us up and take us to Sunday school. And then they would give us, like a scone. I think if I say a scone or like a cookie or something like that, and like some cordial. What do you guys got? Kool-Aid. And like some Kool-Aid. And then we would like sing these songs about God. And I just remember.
That was your first introduction.
Yeah. My first introduction to Christianity and like Jesus was people being incredibly generous to me. You see those Christmas angel kids in the mall at Christmas time. I was a Christmas angel kid. So I came to know God through songs and generosity.
Yeah.
And it's kind of become my mandate now, because I have seen in my own life how much it can change the whole trajectory of your whole life. It can change your whole family, just being generous in songs. So it's no coincidence that I value generosity a lot now, and that I became
a songwriter.
I just always wanted to write songs that was like, I hope for somebody else when they sing the songs, they encountered the Jesus that I met when I was singing songs as a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
They encounter the same safe place that I found in songs about God and in worship that I encountered as a 5-year-old who didn't have a safe place. Like the same father that I came to know through songs when I didn't have a father at home to go home to. So that was kind of like, how I came to know God. And I wouldn't say that feels like the biggest, like, look, you've been born into this faith journey, except that it was, because there was nothing in my life for a long time. Even, my mum got saved when I was about 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And she actually married my Sunday school teacher, which is really sweet. And he's the most wonderful, wonderful dad. He became
your stepdad.
Oh my gosh. I don't even, he technically is my stepdad, but I don't even call him that, because I can totally tell he was the dad that God had for me. I think
you didn't have a relationship with your biological father.
No, I mean, I know who he is,
Yeah.
and I've met him a bunch of times. I've just never ever been able to think of him as my biological father. He actually has 2 other sets of kids, like one with one of my mum's best friends. And my mum's still best friends with this woman today, which is so great. I mean, like, welcome to Australia. It's like, oh, well, we'll just get along anyway.
That's right. Good grief.
So I think I've just never thought of him like that. And I've never felt connected to him like that. My mum got pregnant with triplets and didn't even tell him about us until we were 2.
And that's pretty rare to be pregnant with triplets, and identical triplets with no help.
No support system, because she, her mum left her when she was 2 and then she got passed around the family. And so even her support network was quite broken,
Yeah, that's why I think you're such a marvel to me, because historically that is a miracle that you came out doing what you're doing with the personality that you have and the depth of faith.
Well, one thing I'm super grateful for, and people, sometimes when I tell the story of, my origins, I guess, that makes me sound like a Marvel character, like an X-Men. I'm cool. Like, okay, great, sure. But when I talk about my story, I think some people are like, oh my gosh, I think they're like, oh, that's so hard. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But I think even that is like part of faith, is that you can look back, and I look back and all I can see is all the moments that God met me along the way.
Yeah.
All I can see is, oh my gosh, I don't know how you found this little kid in the back end of like some project housing in Wagga Wagga. I know, how funny is that as a word, Wagga Wagga? It's a city in Australia. But you found this kid in the back end of this like town in Wagga, town called Wagga in Australia, and you found a way to like make sure that they encountered you.
Yeah.
Like that to me is mind blowing.
Yeah,
like
it is.
So I'm like, if that doesn't give you faith, nothing will. But I think it all comes down to how you choose to look back.
How you choose to look back. That's so good that you brought that up, because when you said that, I'm like, yeah, there are people that still live in their grief from all of their history.
Yeah.
But if you turn around and actually see the gratitude of what the Lord actually brought you,
right,
it's insane.
I think, that's part of healing as well.
Yeah.
Because I think healed people look back and say, look what the Lord has done.
Yeah.
That's when you're in your testimony season.
Yeah.
When you can't look back and say, but God.
Yeah.
I think, there's probably a deeper work there, and I think it's always really important for people to look back, and instead of saying, where were you, God, to look back and say, God, like, show me where you were.
Yeah.
Like, show me who you were trying to be.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I've done. Like, I remember, and this is probably, I don't know if this is taking this miles off, but like, I do think I love like the idea of like letting the Holy Spirit counsel you.
Yeah.
So I remember like when we were getting married, one thing that was like, had never been a point of contention for me my whole life was finance, because I had this whole faith journey with finance where I'd taken the Bible very literally and been like, well, the world of the generous gets larger and larger and the world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
I would read scriptures like those who lend to the poor, lend to God. And I'm like, I want to lend money to God. That's awesome. He probably pays back with interest. So I had this whole faith journey with finance of coming out of like very like incredibly low income, always struggling to make ends meet family, to like in a place where in my heart as like a 19-year-old, I'd say, God, one day I want to be able to cover my family. I want to be able to help my family out.
Right.
And like God totally did it. So, but I remember when I was getting married, I had this moment where I suddenly had a lot of fear about finance again. And what it was that I realized I was great if I was on my own, because nobody else's fingers were in the mix, But then as soon as you put somebody else in the mix, I have no control over how you're going to do it. And I remember having this moment where I said, I was sitting with our pastors and they were like, do you want to do some inner healing on this? And I thought, no, I don't want to do inner healing on this. Like, I'm not the problem here. I've managed my finances well.
Right.
But actually I was the problem, It was actually my fear. It wasn't Joran's.
Right.
And I had this moment where they said, like, just ask God what he was doing in the moment and where this fear comes from. And I thought, the fear comes from like, Joran and me knowing Joran's like finances and all that sort of stuff. It had nothing to do with that. The fear actually came from like being scared that if I didn't have that I was going to have to be the provider again, and that I was going to have to work hard. And I'm like, that's not true. And I remember God showing me this moment when I lived in the projects, this moment where we lived in the projects. My mom was up at the pub and or the bar, when my mom was up at the pub, and I had this moment with my sisters where we found this old curtain, and I said, look, if we make a beautiful dress for mom, then she's gonna be able to meet a dad for us.
Oh gosh.
And in my heart, I was like, then we're gonna be looked after.
Oof. Whoa.
And God shows me this moment during this marriage counsel, pre-marriage counseling, where I was having fear about finance. Anyway, and instead of saying, well, where were you, God, in that season?
Yeah.
I said, show me, God, where you were. And I see Jesus sitting beside me with a pair of scissors making the dress. And he turns to me and he says, haven't I always been the one that took care of you? And I started bawling because I realized in this moment.
You've never told me this story.
In this moment of transitioning from it's me and Jesus and we're going to walk this out to including a third person and having to come under somebody else, submit to somebody else's and join with somebody else. Even joining bank accounts is very scary. I had to be reminded in that moment by looking back and by letting the Holy Spirit step in. I had to be reminded in that moment, haven't I always been the one that took care of you?
Yeah.
And it was Jesus literally saying, don't you put this pressure on anybody else. Don't you be in fear about anything else. Don't forget what I said and what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I was the same back then as I'm going to be now.
Yeah.
Hey,
everybody, this is Rita, and I love talking about things that I feel really will benefit people. And I meet so many people who are in this place in their life when they're looking for the next thing. What is God calling them to? They feel like they're called to full-time ministry, but they don't know what that looks like. And I get a lot of people asking me man, are there colleges or ministry schools that about that could help me get to the next level of what God's called me to? And honestly, one of my favorites is the BSM school in Redding, California. That's Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry in Redding, California. I have been such a great, incredible lover of Bethel music, like many of you. There's a station always playing their music. I love their worship leaders. I have great relationship with them. And I've actually really loved how they pull people in to develop their ministry giftings. Whether you want to be a pastor or an evangelist, or you want to learn more about the prophetic or learn more about intercession and prayer, Bethel really does that well. And so I think it's a really good opportunity for you if you're in a place where you feel like God is moving your calling into a direction where you're looking for mentorship and you're looking for teaching and you're looking for a season to be led and shepherded into maybe the next chapter of what God's called you to in full-time ministry. Check out Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry. There's a discount. I partnered with them, so they're going to give a discount to you. If you go to bethel.ws/Rita, you'll get a couple $100 discount there. And it's so beneficial. I'm telling you that if I'd never done ministry school early on, I don't think it would have shaped me the way that it shaped me for what was coming. I didn't know then what was coming. And I just want to encourage those of you that really feel called to full-time ministry, but you don't know what that looks like, but you feel like, no, there's a part that you play in bringing the kingdom of heaven to earth. And Bethel is just a great school to look at, to go to. So Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry, Redding, California. If you go to bethel.ws/Rita, you can get a discount there. And I just encourage you to check it out if this is what God's doing in this season of your life.
So I don't know if that takes it kind of off.
Well, were you able to? I actually love that because I think it's a big issue for, I did, early in the year, I did podcasts on singleness, and it resonated so deep. I mean, I know so many single women.
Oh my gosh,
who are they're treasures.
They're 10 and a half.
Oh,
They're
my
amazing.
Gosh. And it's almost like there's this massive shortage of really great guys, but there's all of this stuff that especially single women, but I would even say married women struggle with it too, with the provision, Mark. Just faith for provision.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been, you and I've had countless conversations about that. I think for me that would have been a big one. It's like when you're fighting all the time just to do it yourself. And my thing has always been the spirit of poverty, going back to the spirit of poverty and having the Lord be like, well, until you cut that tether, I'll never be full provision.
Right.
Because you lean against the spirit of poverty more than you lean against the provision of the Lord.
Right. Which, what's the spirit of poverty? Like, I'm gonna be in lack.
Oh yeah, all the time.
When God says I want to do exceedingly abundantly above and beyond. And don't get me wrong, this isn't something that like, you know, I don't know why we're leaning into the provision side, but I really feel like someone needs to hear this, especially in the economy we're in at the moment.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you have a choice all the time. And like, it's easy when you're in a season of abundance to be like, we're good.
Exactly.
Like, but then when something happens where you're like, I did not see that coming. You know, this year has been so different for my family because I had a baby. So I had to like, you know, choose what I wanted to prioritize, and I wanted to prioritize my daughter.
Yeah.
Well, that cut my work hours like to like a third of what they were. Well, then my husband got a different job that was like a dream job for him. And so, you know, have to be home more. But then, okay, well now that those things are taken away, where's your head going to go? You know, and even
Did you have to fight that old stuff?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I think the enemy's only got a few tricks up his sleeve.
Yeah.
So like for me, I think he'll throw at me like, this is all on you. You have to carry this all on your own. I think a lot of women can relate to that, especially like if you don't do it, no one's going to do it for you. Yeah. You know, you're going to have to. And I think it's going back to that thing of like Jesus being like, haven't I always been the one? Like where do you believe your provision comes from? So like, I mean, even recently I had to have one of those moments and I was actually like, oh my gosh, I don't actually know what I'm going to do. And I had to, it's funny how God will always come through after you have been like, okay, I trust you. You know, he'll wait until you're partnered with what he's already doing. Usually because he's trying to teach you something in the mix, you know? And I remember having a moment where I'm just like, I don't know what to do. So you're just going to have to figure it out and have to go back to that promise. And, you know, then I get a phone call from the licensing person at my label. And she's like, oh, by the way, your pay is this much this month. And I said, excuse me? And she goes, oh, it's this much. And it was like a third more than I thought it was going to be. Wow. And I go, you know, sometimes I have those stories and sometimes I have peace, you know, right. And sometimes I have both, you know, and I think it's just.
Yeah, but don't you feel like when you're in that, I don't want to say race for faith, but almost like you're exercising your faith. Yeah. There's more of a contending in those seasons. And then when it seems like with you, whenever you talk, I'm always like, no, all she has to do is remind herself. Like, I feel like I'm always punching it out and contending for faith. And she's
you're contending.
She's but when you come across all that you've done and you the landscape that you can look at of all the faith that you've acquired, or the things that your faith is settled. Like,
your testimonies.
They're your testimonies. You almost come to a place where you kind of just have to remind yourself again that he's cutting the dress. Yeah. And he's the provision. There are some of us that we're duking it out there in the desert lands.
I will say, like, you know? I'm definitely duking it out with God, like on a regular basis. It's just that there's some things that you can't fight your way into. You have to rest your way into. And honestly,
okay, what is that?
That's terrifying, because especially when you have learned to do things a certain way. Like, yes. You know, but faith is like stepping into the unknown every time. It's being convinced that God is as good as he says he is, and then stepping out going, I don't have a plan for this. I just know that you're good. Yeah. So, you know, with meeting my husband, I had gone on this faith journey with God where it was like a treasure map, you know? You guys were. It was like a treasure map where God was like, let's go on a treasure hunt for your husband. Yeah. And, you know, I had been the first thing God did was say to me, I want to heal the sickness with no name. And I was like, stop talking in riddles, you know? And
I want to heal the sickness with no name.
The sickness with no name.
This is when you were single.
Yeah, this is when I was
single. All the single
single
ladies need to listen to this.
Yeah, I mean, I want to heal the sickness with no name. And I was like, okay, that sounds like it's very Voldemort-y, you know, like kind of random thing to say. You know, and I'd prayed that, you know, when God says something, but you're kind of praying it as well.
Yeah.
And you're like, I wouldn't have prayed that. That wasn't me. That was like literally someone else interceding for me. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you have let disappointment go so deep that it's turning into something else. And honestly, I saw it like cancer, where it's going to overtake every organ and everything in your body if you do not deal with this disappointment and you don't let me cut it out. And he said, would you let me heal it? And I said, okay. And I'd love to tell you that in a moment it was gone and I was great.
Right.
God literally had me walk through so many of the same things that I'd been disappointed by in the past. And
almost to touch on that bruise so that you would recognize.
Well, it's so funny when people say like, oh, I'm totally healed from that. And I always say you're healed from it because the person lives on the other side of the country. Like, let's see what happens when they move next door, because that's real healing, you know?
Yeah. So you had that kind of.
So it was like God going, let's get some real healing. You're okay. You're healed and you're fine as long as you don't have to encounter the same things again. But the way that God often heals is he makes you walk through the same things again and you come out different and it doesn't affect you the same way.
Right.
So I ended up walking through some of the same things and some of the same disappointment and I came out not disappointed. I came out expectant and grateful that God had protected me and hidden me. And that was like over like probably a 2-year period. And then I remember saying to God, and this is the cool thing about God, is like some of you don't take the Bible literally, and I'm like, you totally should, because at the end of the day, be it unto you according to your faith. Like I take things very literally. Like I'm like, oh, if I lend to the poor, I lend to God. Awesome. I'm going to make sure I've got cash in my wallet for every single poor person that I see that asks me for money, 100%, because I want God to owe me a lot of money. Like that's going to be awesome.
Anybody that knows you, they know how generous you are.
Well. Yeah, I love being generous. I've seen the power of it, you know.
But I think that's the thing. You can't just say, "Oh, yeah, they're super generous people." It's you live a language of generosity, and you live it in all aspects. So it's not just what you give; it's almost like it's who you are.
Oh, I want it to be who I am.
And you can see the favor of the Lord on it.
Oh my gosh, there's if in doubt, if you're in any season, whatever season you're in. It's incredibly hard to be disappointed, incredibly hard to be depressed, incredibly hard to be like sorry for yourself if you just go and be generous.
Yeah, and break the back of it.
Oh my gosh, it will like crush it. Like, anyway, I went on this treasure hunt with God. So God had started healing this disappointment, and then I was in church, and I love how when you ask God, he wants to let you in on it. Like God is waiting to partner with you. And so I'd said to God, I'm going to keep trusting you. And I feel like you're doing a deep work in me, but also what are you doing?
Yes.
Because I was like, I'm still waiting here to meet my husband. Like, can you maybe let me in on it? And he literally shows me, like I have this vision of this furniture warehouse just while I'm standing in church. And I'm creative, but I'm not this creative. And I have a vision of this furniture warehouse, and I look up and God the Father is standing beside me. And he says to me, you can pick anything you want. And I look out and there's all these amazing one-of pieces of furniture, like amazing pieces, like, you know, the sort of pieces where you can't afford any of them. And I start walking around this warehouse, and every now and then I'll see something and I'll think, yes, that's it. And someone would beat me to it. Or I would get to it and I would be like, oh, I mean, it's great, but I just don't have peace about it. You know, that deep peace?
Yeah.
And honestly, that's how I'd felt in life. Like where I would be like, here's the one. I have peace about this. And somebody else would beat me to it.
Yeah.
Which if someone else beats you to it, he's not the one. Like, so just relax.
Right.
And then, you know, things where I'd be like, on paper, this is good, but I just don't have peace about it. And, you know, I would have people say to me, well, you just need to push through. That's your commitment issue. And believe me, God is incredibly smart. If you don't think the peace of God transcends understanding, then then you will make yourself push through something that is not God and force yourself to have a peace that's not really there.
Yeah.
You know, don't you think that God's peace can transcend even your own commitment issue? It absolutely can. And by the way, I didn't have commitment issues. I was a very loyal person. I just didn't have peace. And that was, at the end of the day, that was it. And I wasn't going to compromise on that. Not for one of the biggest decisions I'm going to make in my whole life. Anyway, in this vision, I come back to God and I say, I don't want to do this unless you do this with me. And he smiles and he says to me, you know, Mia, everything here is good. He's like, I'm actually the one that made everything here. So all of it's good. And he goes, there are some pieces here that would be way better for you than other pieces. And he said, but if you really want me to pick with you, and not everybody does, he said, I will custom make it for you. It's not here, I'll custom make it for you. And I smiled because I felt like you know, that thrill of hope.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, yes. And God said, but it means you're going to be empty-handed for a bit longer. Are you okay with that? And I said, yes. And then the vision was over.
Hey, everybody. I want to tell those of you that are musicians and specifically piano players about something that I've been using that really has transformed and changed a recording process for me. There is a company that I found that I've partnered with that has been lending me this incredible piano bar, is what they call it. It's from Earthworks Audio. You can find them online, earthworksaudio.com. And this is how this piano bar works. As you can see, this piano bar fits inside of a piano like so. I think it would work for an upright as well. I have a baby grand. This bar just sits right in between the piano edges, and it has these two mics. It's a very, very sensitive piano bar. It just sits right in this piano bar, and then it just has this connecting wire that comes out for all the plugins that you would need to plug into your interface. It's super easy. It's incredibly convenient. If you are an acoustic piano player, if you have a home studio and you're looking to mic an acoustic piano, Earthworks Audio is one of your best bets. Check them out online.
So one thing I recommend people doing, and I don't think there is, I don't know, everybody's got a self-help book of here's how you get a breakthrough. I don't think there is a formula to getting a breakthrough.
Yeah.
I think one thing I would recommend based on my own journey is you have to get a promise from God.
Yeah.
Because I think we have a lot of people contending for a promise as far as just, praying I need this to happen, I need this to happen, I need this to happen. But what if you took your situation and said, God, what are you doing? And you learned how to partner with what he is already doing. Because faith...
break that down, because I think that's a really good... I've had this conversation with some friends of ours who are still single. And that is one of the things that we talked about. I feel like I have a promise from the Lord. But some people don't feel like God's ever promised them certain things that they're wanting.
Either that, or maybe they're not hearing the promise the way they think they need to hear.
Okay. Because
I'm do you have...
What is a promise? When you break that down, to you, if God's promised you something, what does that look like for you to stay contending for it?
Okay, well, I'm going to break it down quite a bit further. I think it is a silly belief system to believe that God has not been interested in a part of your life that matters incredibly to you.
Boom, yes.
I think it's silly to believe he's not been interested until the moment you decide to beg him.
Thank you.
What a silly way to think.
Yes.
He's
but people think
he's calm down.
Man.
I've got all your days written.
Yeah.
And then he's not going back and being oh my gosh, grab the editors of heaven. We've forgotten the husband, quick, go back. Let's tear out some pages.
Right.
I don't think he's like that.
Right.
You have
but
to.
But people live like he's like that. They believe that he's like that.
Let me assure you, he is not.
Yeah.
Let me assure you, based on hard evidence of I have lived it. You can argue with my theology. You can argue with, my doctrine, but you can't argue with my experience because I've lived it.
Amen.
And I would recommend that when you hear somebody's testimony, you like if they have fruit that you want, then that is permission for you to say, God, you did it for them, you can do it for me.
Amen.
That's why when you don't have a promise or you aren't seeing a breakthrough, like, oh my goodness, get around people who are having breakthroughs.
Yeah.
At the moment, I keep hearing stories of people getting the most wild, unbelievable jobs, like their dream jobs, people that are having like crazy financial breakthroughs, people that are walking into things that they have dreamed up for years. And I'm like, I want to be around that. There's things I'm still contending for and believing for in what I feel called to do. I want to be around that. And it's reminding me to go back to like some of the things I was dreaming about. Like, and I think for single women, for single men, I think it's funny how you'll say, well, God hasn't given me a promise. And I'm like, is that true? Or did you just get sick of waiting on the last thing he said and it got disappointing and disheartening? So you put that aside and downgraded it. Because I promise you, if you go back far enough, there's things God has said along the way the whole time.
Yeah.
One thing I haven't talked about before is honestly just how detailed God is. So, when I was 16, you're going to get a laugh out of this. When I was 16, I was in love as you do as a 16-year-old. I was in love with this guy in our youth ministry, and I was like, yes, God, I want to marry this guy. And I remember like being the little zealot that I was. I remember fasting about it. I fasted for 16 days. And I got sick of water, so I started having milkshakes halfway through, but it was still liquid, so it counted. Of course. I fasted for 16 days. On the 16th day, I went to youth group and I found out he'd started dating my best friend.
Oof.
And I was shattered. I was so shattered. And I remember walking home after youth group by myself and crying my heart out. And I think I got some chicken nuggets on the way because I was like, stupid fast didn't work. But actually it did because it got me an answer.
Right.
And I don't think you can fast to force somebody to come into your will for their life. So don't hear it that way. I fasted because I wanted an answer and I got an answer and it was like, no. And I remember walking home and like looking up at the sky and like crying my heart out and saying, well, God, I don't want just some random coincidence then. I want a story. I want a story.
Wow, it's 16.
I want an amazing story. I want a story that only you could write.
Ooh.
And I remember saying that to God. And I remember the moment that Joran proposed to me. This is kind of jumping around quite a bit, but I remember the moment, and I remember, sorry, I'm going to rewind just because I think people love details. I remember when I was 22 having a dream, and in the dream I was hugging a tall, dark guy, like with dark hair, and he was getting on a plane and going away. And I woke up and the Holy Spirit says to me, he doesn't live here. And it was like, I lived in Australia at the time, and it was like the Holy Spirit said to me, he's not Australian. And I went, okay. So I have like these little details. Well, the whole like, I want a story thing, I totally forgot about.
When did you remember that?
Well, when Joran proposed, which is a whole other thing, like there's a whole story about the ring where I'm like, only God knew the ring. But I remember when he proposed, I had the ring on and I was just like, I can't believe it. And I felt the pleasure of God. I felt God tearing up, so happy that it had finally happened. And I felt him just have so much joy about the whole thing. And I heard him whisper, you wanted a story. And he took me back to that moment as a 16-year-old. And he goes, you forgot, but I never did. And I was like, wow.
Oh, you're killing me.
So to like kind of sum that up, I think to believe that God is not taking notes, that God is not using every single thing, that God is only just getting involved because it's taken him by surprise, that's just not true. To go to God, and like there are people that have been waiting far longer than I waited,
Yeah.
So I go, I don't have an answer for why you had to wait the way you did. I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
But I promise you, if you look for how God has been holding out on you, you will find that. If you look for what God is doing and what he's still wanting to do and how he wants to be kind to you, you'll find that. It's why it's so important to get healed of like disappointment, why it's so important to get healed of feeling like at the end of the day, no one's going to come through for you, because you'll find what you're looking for, and if your filter is one thing, you'll find that, and that will keep you in a season of delay every time.
Now, do you, is there ever part of you though that, because it feels like, okay, you had to wait a while and you got the guy and you had the great story, and then you get married and you have this journey with not being able to have a baby. And that, I think with your surgeries and stuff like that you had to go through, maybe that might've been a thought in the back of your mind, but I don't know that we want to go from struggle to struggle to struggle to struggle, because it almost sometimes for some people feels like my whole life is just a journey of faith. Like I just got to have to believe for this and believe for this.
What a gift.
Yeah.
What a gift. Yeah. Like that you have to force yourself to like live by faith every single day. What a gift. Like, and I think you can choose to see it as struggle, or you can choose to see it as like, oh, I am going to have I'm going to have testimony after testimony. There's so many times where I don't actually want to, for you I will, but there's so many times when people ask me to come on their podcast to talk about how I met my husband, and I think, why would I do that? I've got new testimonies,
right.
Like I don't want to just have one. I want to have I want to get to heaven and be like, check it out.
Right.
Like check it out. I literally implemented the kingdom of heaven and and the will of God on earth. And like I saw miracle after miracle after miracle. You want to see that stuff and you want to have big faith. I'm sorry, but like you don't get it by things being easy.
Right.
You can just live and exist and have an easy life, but like guess how big your capacity will be? About this big.
Right.
And I've got friends who things come easy, and I think, yeah, but like your capacity's not that big, and I wish it was bigger.
Yeah.
Because maybe there's bigger things that God has for you, but you'll never contend for them because you just don't have the energy for it.
Right.
Now, did I want my story to be like, oh, we're gonna gut you like a fish and like take out massive tumors, and we're also gonna just take an ovary while we're in there, and like good luck with getting pregnant in your late 30s with like a uterus that won't work and one ovary. Right. Like, I mean, you have such a choice every single moment, like of what you're going to partner with. And that's why I say you've got to get a promise from God.
Yeah.
My promise from God was that he was going to write me a beautiful story, and that like he was going to do something that was custom made for me.
Yeah.
And I think whatever, one of the outlets I have is songs. So like I would put it into every single song. The thing that I'm contending for, when I couldn't pray for it anymore, I would sing it over myself. And I would put it into like unknowingly into even other people's songs that I was writing for. Because I think you can't help but let it come out of you. You can either wait till you get your breakthrough and then say it afterwards, thanks so much, God.
Yeah.
Or you can celebrate your way into it, thank your way into it. So when, even when I was believing for a baby, one of the things that God had said to me was, I'm going to take your story from a beautiful story to a miracle story.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. But also, oh no.
Yeah.
Because it meant that I was like, why am I going to need a miracle? Like, well, then I found out why,
Right.
But it's funny. God won't ever leave you hanging. Like, and you know this, Rita.
Yeah,
like you and I have had tons of conversation where you'll be like, well, I'm in this season, and I was just in bed and I asked God, like, what are you doing? And the Lord spoke to me and he said this. And it gives you like, it almost gives you some instruction for how to walk it out, So one of the things for me, we had decided we were going to, we always wanted kids.
Yeah.
We were excited about trying for kids. And like, it had never occurred to me that I wouldn't get pregnant, because my mum's miscarried a couple of sets of twins. She's had triplets. Like, both my sisters can get pregnant, no problems. And I never thought it would be an issue for me. And so I remember having an ultrasound done, because I'd been having like I was like anemic, and I was like, I mean, it's not a big deal. I'll just take an iron supplement. It'll be fine. But I had an ultrasound, and I remember having the ultrasound, and that night I go to bed and I have a dream. And in the dream, I'm 20 weeks pregnant with twins. And in the dream, one twin is bigger and one twin is smaller. And I am like a bit panicked. And I look up at the doctor and I said, oh my gosh, is everything okay? And he puts his hands on my shoulder. He said, everything's okay. You don't have anything to worry about. Everything's going to be fine. And I woke up. The next morning, I got the results of the ultrasound, and they said, your womb's grown to 20 weeks pregnant, and you have 2 tumors in there. One is bigger and one is smaller. And in that moment, you have a choice to like start to panic and come into agreement with, oh my God, it's cancer. Oh my gosh, like they're going to have to take my uterus out. Or God had literally given me something the night before to hold on to, which was everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. Like even down to the detail that like in the dream, I'm 20 weeks pregnant with twins, and like they're like, oh, you're 20 weeks, you know, your uterus is that big. So like right then I have something to hold on to. And that's why I'm in agreement right then if everything's going to be okay. Yeah. We go in for the surgery. Like, and don't get me wrong, I was believing that they were going to, the day of surgery was going to come and they were going to find nothing. It was all going to be healed. Yeah. And I would love to tell you that like the way faith works is you get the thing you're believing for every time. Let me tell you, you absolutely do. You just don't get it the way you want it. Mm-hmm. You will not, you will almost never get it the way you think it's going to happen. So did I have to have, you know, open abdominal surgery? Yes, I did. Did they take an ovary? Yes, they did. That just made me more, it made me like want to dig my heels in a little bit more because I'm like, oh, now I've got even more against me. And I remember waking up from surgery and Joran like holding my hand. You know, the surgery was supposed to take 3 hours and it took 7, or 2 hours and it took 7. And Joran held my hand when I woke up and he said, love, I'm so sorry they've taken one of your ovaries as well. And I remember just a little tear just rolling down my cheek. And I just said to him, and I would, you know, I would tell you that it was the drugs, but it was not the drugs. It was like, you know, at the end of the day, you decide, I decided long before the surgery who I was going to believe and what I was going to believe. Yeah. And so when I woke up, I've got this tear rolling down my face and I said, that's okay. We'll just call the other one hero ovary and it can be the hero of the story. So I call my right ovary hero ovary because it's a little hero. Right. And, you know, and I'd love to tell you that then had the surgery, we waited for everything to heal and we got pregnant. And that's just not what happened.
Not happened, yeah.
And I think for people listening to this, just because it didn't happen the way you thought it was going to happen, it didn't happen the timing you thought it was going to happen. Just because you've had to face another hurdle after like getting past the last one does not mean God is trying to be mean. It doesn't mean doesn't want to be kind to you. I went back for a scan a year and a half later and they found more tumors and I had to have surgery again. And I didn't want to have surgery again. Yeah. And let me put this out there for free. Be very careful who you have in the room with you when you're believing for something, because you want to make sure you steer clear of people who are just going to tell you their opinion, especially if they don't have fruit that you want, and you want to make sure that you steer clear of people that try and downgrade your promise. Oof. Well, have you considered? You know, have you considered this? Have you considered that? Yeah. You know, we had lots of people say, well, have you considered doing it this way? And I said, no, I haven't considered that. Yeah. And if God had said to me, do it this way, we would have done it that way. I had absolutely no peace about that. Yeah. So you know, you can strong arm heaven into getting whatever you want, especially if you take the reins. And then you can like produce like the fruit that you want and like produce the promise that you want. And then you can tell everybody it's heaven, but deep down people know it wasn't. Yeah. And I don't want to have stuff in my life where deep down people know, no, you did this, not God. You did it, yeah. God blessed it.
You're right.
And God's so kind that he'll permit it.
Yeah. Ugh.
But it's real tough to wait patiently on the Lord.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's why people jump ahead.
Yeah. Or they just give up and they try and get a new promise. Right. And God's still trying to fulfill the last one that he gave them.
Hey, everybody, I want to take a minute to talk to those of you and encourage those of you who maybe you're planting a church, you're on staff at a church, you're in the children's department of a church, and you run and oversee the curriculum at your kids' division of church. There is some friends of mine that have developed this curriculum that I just think it's the best curriculum for kids' church out there. It's called Amazing Kids. It is a Bible-based, spirit-filled curriculum. I know these guys. They are incredible creatives. Connie and Tyler Bates are the genius behind this, and they just love serving kids and serving God in serving our kids. If this is something that your church is looking for, if it's something that you as a pastor of your children's department is looking for, an enriched Bible-based curriculum to bring to your children's department of your church or your church plant, this is something that I would highly recommend that you do. I fully believe and back what these guys do. My own kid was under it for years, and it's just the way that they're doing it right now is just beautiful. So you can find all that information if you go to amazing.kids, and there's a kind of a special discount code that you can get, or a promotional code that you can get if you type in Rita in the promotional area of that, and they'll give you special pricing on that. But it's something that I just highly recommend. And kids are so important. They're so important in our churches. What we do when we drop our kids off in church and what's happening in the Sunday school area is so important for your children. And this curriculum is one of the best, and you will love it for your church. So check that out. It's incredible, and I back it 100%. I know the one thing about this part of your story that's actually so ministered to me is because we have very similar.
Oh my gosh.
Our tumors
similar.
were the same.
Yep.
Our surgeries were the same. And so I absolutely understood what you were going through. But I was watching you from the other side of the fence being like, oh, I would never have the baby. And I had to actually believe that adoption was what he had given me.
Totally.
And so looking at that and being like, yeah, I mean, my story's completely different. The first surgery tried to save it. Second surgery took everything from it. But he had prepared me ahead of time.
Right. With
this baby that I didn't know was the pre-production for being willing to just say, it's okay. That was justice was my dream, that everything was going to be okay.
Totally.
So that's why I was like, yeah, I totally understand what you're saying, because I ran through the same physical ailment, but in a different way, having to trust for something and then looking and seeing justice being enough.
Right.
He was everything, and he was enough, and I didn't need what I thought I needed.
Right.
You know?
Even the fact that God was like, I will put a baby in your arms.
Yeah. Like that's mind blowing. It's like, it wouldn't be like, yeah, but you didn't get to have a baby. It's like, no.
She got a promise from God, and God was orchestrating a story on her behalf.
Yeah.
Where when God does that, like, honestly, you have to get out of the habit of trying to compare your story to everybody else's.
Yes.
God is so good about like preparing your heart and preparing your world for what he has for you. You know, like I've got so many friends who, you know, like so many kid stories, all of them, I would call them all miracle kids. They all happened completely differently. I would call Justice a miracle kid. And I go like, he might even be a double miracle. He's quite amazing.
I mean, of all the places in all the world, I mean, yeah, it's like that. It's just, you talk about mind blowing.
Right.
That's mind blowing to me from the Lord.
Yeah.
Like, did I ever get to have a baby? Nope.
Except that you did.
Except that I did.
Which is so cool.
And the way that the Lord had done it was the best thing he could have done.
Right.
And that, I think, is, man, you want people to see that side of it without it being the conception of what they think looks like the promise of God.
Right. And I think it's a big deal. You know, there will be someone listening or watching right now who is going, you know, but I don't want that story, or I do want that story, you know. And I go, I got out of the habit of being like, because sometimes like we will listen to things and we will hear something through fear. I'm telling you, if something's not supposed to be your story, don't like think that God is going to be like, this is what you're going to get. And like, you know, I have friends that like, who like, I mean, and even I grew up thinking like, oh, I can't desire to be a musician, because then God will probably make me a janitor, or like God will probably make me like a preacher, you know, like
just ridiculous.
I'm like, how stupid. Like the Bible literally says that like, if you delight yourself in God, he will give you the desires of your heart. That doesn't mean that he'll not only like put it in your hands and like bring it about. I'm convinced that believes that he's the one that puts them there. So like even for people who are like, well, I don't have a promise from God. I'm like, do you have desires in your heart?
Yeah, ding,
that
ding.
Like that line up with like
Right.
God's heart for people? Yes.
Yeah.
Don't you think God's passionate about marriage? Yes. Incredibly passionate. Do you think he's passionate about family? Oh my gosh, no one's more passionate about family than God.
Right.
You know, no one's more passionate about adoption than God.
Right.
No one's more passionate about like growing something from a seed than God.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I think it's, you know, as far as even walking in faith, you've got to be so careful that you're not like defaulting to this fear thing of like, what if God is holding out on me? Because that's honestly, that's an Eden mentality. That's like, oh, maybe God's holding out on me, so I have to take everything into my own hands, especially women. You know?
Yeah, an Eden mentality, you call that.
It's like
Yeah.
this like fallen Eden mentality
Yes.
of like,
Yeah.
like, oh, I've been given everything. I have access to God himself. I have access to everything I could ever need because I'm literally, that's my birthright.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my birthright as like a son or daughter of God. But I'm still deep down believing this whisper of like, what if? Like, what if God is holding out on you? You better take matters into your own hands. I'm like, you don't have to do that. He's not holding out on you.
Yeah. It is that, you know, when you go back to Genesis and the way that it phrases, when she saw that the fruit was in her eyesight, what she thought she didn't have that she already had.
Right.
That's when she trips up and she makes the mistake.
Yeah.
And that I think is the biggest lie finder in scripture. It's like, why are you letting the enemy convince you of what you already have as
Right.
a promise? That's not a promise.
Right.
And you see that over and over and over again. And we all walk through
Oh,
it.
I live it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? But
yeah.
I think, you know,
I mean, just even watching you before you got pregnant with Booth, watching you have to deal with other people's stuff and, you know, and watching you watch other people get pregnant. And it's not, I don't want to paint even the picture of you. The thing that I love about you the most is that you'll actually be honest in the moment and be like, oh, yeah, but I just don't know why. I remember we had a couple why conversations. It didn't mean that you were letting go of any of the promises of God.
Totally.
But in your own humanity, you were like, but this hurts.
Yeah,
but
I
this
mean,
hurts.
and anyone who's believing for a
Yes.
baby, like, it's tough to have a reminder every single month that it hasn't happened,
Right.
you know? I think you have to like give yourself things to hold on to.
Yeah.
You know, I love doing things in the natural, and I don't think this is a formula. So like, don't hear me say if you go and do this, it's going to happen. I do think sometimes you have to do something in the natural.
Yeah.
You know, because if faith is believing for something and being convinced that God is as good as he says he is, and that like, you know, the story's not finished and it's coming,
Yeah.
then like, why would you not make room as though it were true? So one thing that we did was we bought a crib.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we had that crib set up like a year and a half, 2 years before we even had a baby.
You sure did.
You know, and people would come to our house and they'd be like, oh my gosh, are you pregnant? And I'd be like, yes, hypothetically, I'm going to be. And they're like, so are you pregnant? I'm like, no, but I'm going to be. They're like, oh, okay. You know, and the people who got it. And the people who didn't, but it didn't matter. Like for us, it was for us that we got it, that we'd made space in our lives for something that God had said he was going to do for us. And I think there's like got to be I don't know, someone's probably going to write in and be like, that's unbiblical. And I'm like, okay, sure. Like, but it's not. Maybe it's just you don't have the right mentality about God.
Right.
I think like if God's given you a promise, just don't take no for an answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like good fathers.
Why? Why take no for an answer?
Good fathers don't make promises they're not going to keep.
Right. I mean, I had a question this past week on a song off the Ravens record that I forget which one it was, but Answer Me. And the young woman, her question was, where in the Bible does it say that you don't have to beg God? And so I brought her that scripture in Matthew, I think it is, where it's like, if a son asks his father for bread. Is he going to give him a stone?
Yes. Is he going to give him a snake if he asks for?
Yeah. It's like that. God doesn't, you don't have to come to God being, please, 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 please. But I grew up in that mentality thinking favor looked like, well, you have the favor of God because your songs get chosen or because you do get the husband finally. And your faith, I guess I just don't have faith enough. So we diss ourselves by the lack of the favor on us or the lack of
faith. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so ungodly.
Yeah. What if God's just writing a different story?
Right. And people really don't look at it. A lot of people don't look at it like that.
Because we're awesome at comparison. Like, even I remember being like in my late 20s and being like, even the people who've got like more issues than I have are getting married, because I grew up in the mentality of like, maybe God just has some things to work on in you, like before you're going to get married. Can I just say that is nonsense? Like, now, do I recommend working on your stuff before you get married? Yes, you'll get to skip a lot of hard years of marriage if you work on your stuff. But is marriage the great outworker? Yes, marriage outworks things in you beautifully. And there are some things, like even for me, that like being married has been the redemptive, like full circle moment for those things that I didn't even realize that I wasn't getting full healing for on my own.
Yeah.
It's amazing how God used marriage to do that. So, come out of that nonsense mentality of like, I don't have enough faith or I don't have enough. I'm like, do you have a measure of faith? Do you have a seed? You can do a lot with a seed of faith. Maybe instead of just being like, I don't have enough, maybe you'd be like, well, I'm going to use what I've got. Yeah. And what I've got what you've got might be, God, I don't see it happening. Like, God, I don't have a baby and I've been trying for years and years and years and I've been told this, and this. Maybe that seed of faith, like just for today, looks like, God, thank you so much for the kids that you have prepared for me. Maybe your seed is just starting to thank God. Because I'm telling you, if you don't know where else to start thanking God.
Well, no, I've said it on this podcast before. It's like babies. I mean, the Bible is a plethora of stories.
The Bible is
wanted a baby, got a baby.
Bible's a playbook for how to get a baby.
How to get a baby. I mean, it's not so much with how to get a husband, but boy, if you want a baby out there,
the Bible's kind of a playbook for how to get a husband. Like, I mean, you look at, and I guess that's how you want to look at it. But I would always read Mary and Joseph's story.
Yeah.
And like, I get in like Israeli culture, like back then, like she probably would have been betrothed to like Joseph and like all that sort of stuff. But like, he was a good man. She essentially gets pregnant and like is like, oh, it's like the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And like, come on, he'd be going like, okay, really? Like,
right.
So he's like a good man. So he's going to like divorce her quietly. And like, it even took God speaking to a good man to tell him what to do. I used to read that story and be like, so God, if you can like meet like a good man, like I want a good man. You can speak to a good man and tell him like what your heart is for him and what your will is for him, because he said, stay with Mary, and I go, I'm sorry, that is a marriage story.
Yeah.
That's a God orchestrating. That's a great marriage story. Like where like one guy who's like, oh, I'm not sure. And I mean, I'm not sure. I'm maybe going to like bow out of this. And God's like, do not bow out of this. This is my heart. This is my will for you. I'm like, come on.
Yeah. And it's not like he was the neighbor's baby.
No.
It was God's
baby. But I mean, can you imagine how hard Joseph, imagine I came to Jordan and I was like, I'm pregnant with the Lord's baby. Yeah. Jordan would be like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, it's pretty hardcore. Like, but like the fact that God can, and you had said at the start of this podcast, there's so many amazing women that we know.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's a lack of men. I wonder if that's true. One thing, I live in Nashville. One thing I felt like when I moved here was I was like, am I living in Never Neverland? Like, it's just like a bunch of like lost boys who don't want to grow up. Like, oof. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, and I remember the Holy Spirit saying to me, well, they'll be what you call them. And I was like, oh. And so I started changing my language of how I would talk about guys. Instead of saying there are no good guys, I started saying, God, thank you that there are so many amazing men that you are like teaching and discipling and you're building them to who they need to be. You know, I think it's a like actually women, it's just bad behavior to like constantly be talking down about men. Yeah. It's just, it's not helpful. Yeah. The same as men, it's bad behavior to say women are just nags or women are just high maintenance. It's just bad behavior. Yeah. You know, you will have what you call out in people. Mm-hmm. The other thing is like if I, you know, Joran would say this about me as well. If you met me, before I met Joran, I've changed so much since I met Joran. And I'm not saying I've changed personalities. I'm saying my personality has become more refined since meeting Joran. And it's amazing how his masculinity has drawn out of me more femininity, where I can like sit back and be like, okay, you're the boss. And like, you know, some people hear that and they're scared. And I'm like, no. It's amazing to be under authority. Yeah. But if you met Joran when I met him, you know, I think people want someone that's like the husband of the husband that's like 10 years into it, you know? Yeah. No, you grow together. Yeah. You know, well, Joran, when I met him, like he didn't even look the same. Yeah.
He looks a lot better now.
I mean, I like to think like, you know what? But I feel like I'm a better person and I feel like I look happier now. Yeah. And like people have said that you look softer and you look happier. And I'm like, I hope you're talking about softer from here up, not here down. Like, but it's funny because like, I think you've got to, and then this is not me saying like, go and find some person that makes you dry heave a little bit and then be like, well, Lord, it's your will. I'm like, it's me saying like, consider that God wants to grow that person with you. You know, like I think sometimes we're looking for like this finished package. And if I had waited for the finished package, I totally would have missed it. And some of the things that I thought I wanted, now, like they actually just didn't matter that much. Yeah. You know, one thing that I thought I wanted, and I don't even know if this is like just taking up dead space. No, I love this. One thing I thought I wanted was I was like so excited to get married because I couldn't wait for somebody to take over all my finance and just sort all the finance out. Yeah. Now I'd done really well about not getting into a lot of debt. So I didn't have any debt when I got married. But like finance just kind of stressed me out. I didn't really know how to invest. I didn't really know how to do any of that. So I was like, I'm going to get married. My husband's going to take on all the finance. I won't have to pay any bills. He can just do all of that. Well, I met Joran and I'm like, oh, he's a city planner. Of course he's going to be great at admin. And he's not. He's terrible at it. Like, and, you know, if I had got hung up on that and been like, and I know that sounds like a stupid thing, or even the fact that when I met Joran, Joran was doing this experiment where he was vegan. And can you imagine? Like, I want to eat steak every night. Like, so I was like, if I had got hung up on those things, I would have been like, oh no, you don't fit the bill. Like you're not him. Yeah. You're not the one. You're not custom made. Well, now like Joran's family's in real estate. He showed me like real estate's a great investment and helped us get involved in real estate when I probably never would have done that before. Like that's been one of the greatest like financial investments of our whole marriage. Now, is it something that like he does all the paperwork for that? No, I do it. But like it's still a little bit of an answer to prayer. You know, is he vegan anymore? No, that guy eats New York strips every night. Like, so I think, you know, it's you've got to be willing to be like, God, you know, I've got some things that are non-negotiables, but make sure your non-negotiables are not stupid things, you know, like, you know, I even believing for a baby, you know, there were some things for me that were not negotiable. Like I felt like God say, you're going to carry this baby. And like, so for that season, I had to just be like, okay, God, like I can't go to the left or the right. You have told me that I'm going to carry this baby. Yeah. So I just have to stick with it. Now, can you imagine if I was like, but it has to be twins. If it's not twins, then I'm like, I know it's not you. Like that's stupid. Like, so I think it's like, you know, you can have an idea of how things are going to work out. You can have like some hope for some things and God will come through. Believe me, he'll come through.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, this is Rita Springer. Thank you so much for coming in and joining me on the podcast here with Worship is My Weapon. There's a lot of things I'm doing right now. And one of the things that we provide alongside this podcast is a newsletter that we do that we send out to those of you that are subscribed, where I just answer questions and kind of give you information. And sometimes you guys are able to write in with questions that you just are curious about. We love that. We love that interaction. I actually love to interact with those of you that want something a little bit more beyond the podcast. So if that's you, make sure to get our newsletter, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the newsletter, and stay in touch with all the things that we're doing here on the podcast in that newsletter. There is a language of faith, and it's usually not control.
Oh, it's funny. You got to hold things so loosely.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Don't hold a promise loosely. Hold a promise with all your might.
Yeah.
White knuckle a promise, but don't you cannot white knuckle how it's going to play out.
Right.
You just can't.
Yeah, because all the things that you're saying, it's like you really don't have control over any of your faith, because faith is unseen a lot of times.
Yeah, but you don't need it, because like really it's just being convinced that God is going to do what he said he was going to do, and that he is as good as he says he is. So like everything else is just your framework of how you think it's going to play out.
Right.
Which is like,
and if you're kind of a control freak,
which I am a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's like you have to. That's the thing. That's where I love. Like you do have these beautiful strengths, and you are in control of your life. But when it comes to this, you've just learned this beautiful language of faith that you know how to let go when you need to let go.
You just have to. And honestly, you have to ask God: is this something you want me to fight for, or is this something you want me to rest for?
Yeah, because when you got pregnant with Booth, it was after, was it a year of?
It was like.
Of just every month. It was like you were hoping that you'd be pregnant.
I would every month. Like, no, it was like 3 years of like, so like from like 3.5 from like start of the very first operation to like getting pregnant. And honestly.
6 months after that first operation, you were like, we're hoping to be pregnant
soon. I
was
like, I'm going to get pregnant the first time, like after operation. Which is
where the control comes in.
Yeah, which is where the control comes in. Like, I'm going to get pregnant, it's going to be twins, it's going to be amazing. Like, and like, I was like walking around like I'm pregnant, I know it. Like, and I totally wasn't. Like,
but I still think that's beautiful.
But I will say, do you know what helped us? Is it helped us to be excited every month.
Yes. Yeah, that's what you were all like, I don't know, but I think I could be.
I think I could be. Like, well, I don't know. I feel a bit sick. I'm going to tell myself I feel a bit sick. So you know. And I go like, great. I hope that you go into every day being like, today could be the day I meet my husband. I hope you go into life like that.
Yeah.
I hope you go into life like, today could be the day I get pregnant. You know, like well, it's maybe like on the calendar, it's not even the right day for it, but like today could be the day. Today, God could do a crazy miracle today. You know, and we kind of did that for forever. Like, and I remember, you know, the moment that like I walked into the doctor's office, and they sat me down and they said, you're kind of out of options. Mm. And like I said, you have a choice of what you're going to believe, you know. And I looked at the doctor and I said, I know you have to tell me medically what you're seeing, but respectfully, I'm not out of options. Like I have been given a promise. I'm going to get a miracle baby. Yeah. So can you do me a favor and take me off your list? Like, don't call me anymore. Don't sign me up for any treatments. I won't be taking any hormones. I'll call you when I'm pregnant. And they were like, I could tell they were like, you're a stupid idiot. And I was like, okay, great. Then that means I'm in the right place. And I remember, you know, we were at our church conference, and I'd gone during the church conference and came back, and I didn't even tell Joran that like the doctor had said you're out of options. I just in my heart was like, no, they've told me this, and I came back into agreement with what God has said because I have to. I don't have anything else. All I've got is this promise that you're going to give me a miracle story. And sometimes you got to tell yourself, keep coming back. Go back to the last thing God said. Come into agreement with that. You actually don't need a new promise. Go back to the last thing God said and just keep saying, no, this is what you're doing. This is what you're doing. And I remember going back to the conference that we're at, and Alex just turning around halfway through a sermon saying, hey, Mia, this is so weird, but do you mind if we pray for you? And I was like, sure. And I'm like, awesome. Now the whole room knows that I've like, what they would call a fertility issue. And I was like pretty vehement. Like at that point, I don't want people saying I've got fertility issues. If someone would say, I heard you're struggling with fertility, I'd be like, whoosh, I'm not struggling with fertility.
Yeah.
Just because I just was like, no, that's nonsense. It's not me being in denial. It's me just going, I don't want that spoken over me.
Yeah. It's like that wasn't the promise.
Yeah. Like I'm like, no. And, I'm not the sort of person that would share our journey of all that on Instagram until I've got like, I kind of like to wait until I've got the breakthrough and I'm like, haha, like look at God. Like just because I think that's way more encouraging.
Yes.
And I've got a small community of people that they know they know our story as we're walking it out. And then everyone else can know that like the bigger story, like later on. I don't need people like strangers on the internet giving me advice because sometimes that can make it a lot harder. Right. You've just got a ton more voices and it makes God's voice way harder to hear when you've got a bunch of noise. So, they prayed at conference and, I kind of love those moments where, I don't think it's anything magical about like, this is the moment. Like, but I do think God's so cool about, he's like, I'm going to let this be the moment because I want this whole room to have faith for babies and to have faith for like, look what I've done. Well, I got pregnant. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks later. And I remember calling Alex, she screamed her head off. And then a year later, we're at conference and I'm holding my miracle baby. Yeah. And Alex says, do you want to come and pray for people that are still believing?
Yeah.
Well, even at church, a couple of weeks ago, we had someone come up to us and they presented their twin boys. And they said, these are my miracle boys from conference. I stood up at conference and got prayer. And I'm like, man, that you get to like, that your faith journey is not just for you, it's for so many other people. It's to create a bigger story and to lift the confidence and lift the faith of people around you. Like, I hope that people go and listen to like my story about how I met my husband. And I hope they go, if God can do it for her, then God can do it for me. And that I hope it makes them go, oh my gosh, I didn't even know God was that interested. Oh, he's incredibly interested. Right. I hope the people that have, I don't know why. I just feel like somebody listening to this has been trying for 5 years to get pregnant. I hope you're hearing this. And I hope you know that God wants to be incredibly kind to you. And even coming out of agreement of like, it's something that I've done or that I haven't done or that I'm walking out the consequence of like a bad decision. I promise you, God is not that unkind. He's just not.
That's good.
So.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. Boothie's the best. And what I love about even Booth, you named her Booth because of that little van that used to pick you up and take you to the Salvation Army. So
William and Catherine Booth are the founders, the founders of the Salvation Army. And, when Booth was maybe 4 months old, we went to London. And we, Joran's like, can't you just be a regular wife and want to go to Zara or something? And I'm like, no, we're going to the cemetery. We're going to like some cemetery up north. And we took Booth to the cemetery, which sounds creepy, but, we got a little photo of her in front of, the graves of William and Catherine Booth, her namesake. And, he has this amazing statement that is like probably one of the best faith statements I've ever heard. And it's, I'm not waiting on a move of God. I am a move of God. And I think that's probably a good reminder for everybody listening. Yeah. Sometimes God's waiting on us.
Yeah, that's so good. Thanks, Mia.
Thanks, Rita.
This the great thing about you is if we sat for an hour and just talked about the most amazing songs that you've written, that would be another podcast in of itself. But I always love to talk to you about faith. And
I love talking about faith.
Yeah, because like song schmongs. I mean, songs are great and your writing is insane. But your writing comes from all of this.
Oh, totally. Like, and people like, where to get your inspiration for songs? And I'm like, I'm literally just writing out prayers every day. They're either my prayers or somebody else's prayers or things that I know that person's believing for. And, I don't know, for some reason when you can't say it anymore, it's easy to sing it.
Yeah. And I'm always asking people that I interview what they burn for. I would say you burn for faith, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that that's the signature of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Well, you know, without faith, it's impossible to please God. So more than getting the results that I wanted in life, or, you know, the promises on this side of eternity, I hope that I get to heaven and God goes, you did good, kid.
Yeah.